But when I first watched it, I was pleasantly surprised to hear gasp in the room. I think that is a sign that this guy was not accepted. President Trump needs to come out and say that that was not appropriate to that moment. He needs to apologize. I know that his campaign did, but it's a difference between the campaign doing something and having the candidate themselves. This man offended people. And yes, it was offensive because we have so much racial animus and tension in this country right now. It was ill-advised to have that kind of person there at that kind of rally.
Piers Morgan from Piers Morgan Uncensored recently had Tim Pool on his show, and Piers Morgan did ask Pool about the whole thing with his controversy that he's been caught up in with the, as you all know, the situation that happened with Tim Pool and other people causing problems on YouTube, as they're accused of, and that Tim Pool has to force his staff away, and then also the shocking revelations that came from that. So Piers Morgan, he's here discussed also with Nina Turner, among other things, where Piers Morgan forces Tim Pool to admit a certain truth. Let's go ahead and get right into this discussion that's hosted by Piers Morgan.
Tim Pool, let me ask you straight off the top. There's a lot of activity on X today with big YouTube people, with big YouTube followings, all revealing that the New York Times has contacted them with a number of questions suggesting they've been peddling misinformation. I believe you are one of these. What's your response to what's been going on?
I don't think anything of it. These requests come in all the time. It is funny that they're doing this right before Election Day, about a week out. And it seems like, once again, they're going to try and push this narrative of, you know, only the New York Times and corporate news outlets are allowed to have errors or make mistakes, and often not even fact check them. In fact, I'll give you one really great example I love to cite. Politico currently has two stories live today. One stating that definitively Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election to assist Hillary Clinton, and another definitively stating that story's false and it's Russian disinformation. So if the corporate news outlets are going to, as of right now, be running fake news, everybody makes mistakes. The only thing I can say for what we do here is every story that we use is cited by a news outlet. So if they take issue with anything we are saying, it's our opinion based on the stories they write.
The irony of this, Tim, it seems to me, is this comes at a time when the biggest news story from this election in the last 48 hours has been this relentless attack on Donald Trump for being the new Hitler and for him holding a neo-Nazi style rally at Madison Square Garden, which I was at, first rally I've been to, and bore absolutely no relation to a neo-Nazi rally, not least because there were lots of Jewish people there and some of them had Israel banners. So,
and he's right there, because at that same rally, which the left had accused Trump as well as the RNC of holding there at the Madison Square Garden, where they accused them of being like Hitler, compared to Hitler, and like being every xenophobe in the book, where that basically they also forget that Bill Clinton was also accepted a nomination, that we had a rally and stuff, and also when the time where, you know, a lot of people were being there. But the fact of the matter is that, as Piers Morgan says, that there's like people of different races that were there. Piers Morgan basically stated that there's people with Israeli flags, and then also like people who are minorities as well. And Piers Morgan really did go ahead and hit him on the nail and stuff, where this is accurate, but this is something that the left doesn't want people to know. So before we begin and continue further, let's if you enjoy what I share in this video, go ahead, smash the like button, share this video far wide across social media. And if you have enjoyed this video, enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, click the notification, so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates.
To me, there can't be a bigger example of disinformation than trying to pretend Donald Trump is the new Adolf Hitler. Why are the people peddling that not also getting investigated by the New York Times? And what does that tell you about where mainstream media perhaps is in this election?
Well, we're seeing a lot of corporate outlets running this line, especially attacking Tony Hinchcliffe. And I think it's fair to say, if you've got criticisms of Donald Trump choosing to have a roast comic at his rally, probably not a smart move. But I think it's indicative of having very little left to actually make an argument about. I would prefer to hear anything in terms of plans. I mean, if Kamala would come out and say, definitively, here's one move we will make, I would greatly appreciate that. I can tell you about Donald Trump's arguments, whether or not they'll work effectively in terms of lowering energy prices, which could bring down costs of other goods. I understand what he's saying. And I think this is why we're seeing the polls shift in the direction of Donald Trump. Recently, there was a panel done, I believe it was Mark Halperin, where he asked undecided voters, and one guy just said he's suffering Hitler fatigue or Hitler rhetoric fatigue. And many of the panelists all nodded in agreement that that's all they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, Nina, I want to play the clip. So if people haven't seen it, it's been everywhere, but let's play the clip of Tony Hinchcliffe, who's this comedian who actually started the whole Madison Square Garden rally. And he said this about Puerto Rico.
It is absolutely wild times. It really, really is. And, you know, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there. Again, normally I don't follow the national anthem, everybody. This isn't exactly a perfect comedy setup. There's some people here. All right. Very good.
Now, Nina, there were two things about this that struck me. I mean, I was there at the time. It fell completely flat. I wasn't even sure what he'd said. I just heard the crowd reaction and thought, well, whatever you've just done, they don't like it and they're not laughing, was the first thing. So from a comedic point of view, it failed. But secondly, as Jon Stewart rather brilliantly pointed out last night, this guy, Tony Hinchcliffe, is a legendary roaster. It's what he does. At Tom Brady's roast recently, which I think was a Netflix or Amazon special, whichever one it was, he just spent the entire time spray gunning absolutely everybody in an incredibly offensive manner, and everybody seemed to find that terribly funny. And Jon Stewart was like, look, I find this guy funny. Sorry, this is what he does. He said it's a bit like inviting Beyonce to your rally, and then she doesn't, and of course the joke was she doesn't sing, which is what Beyonce didn't do at the Kamala rally. Can I just ask you, first of all, were you genuinely offended by what he said? And given the context of what Jon Stewart said about what he is, this guy, should we be that offended? Or was it just a case of he shouldn't have been hired for that gig?
He should not have been hired for that gig. Environment matters. So there's a difference between going to a roast where everybody that enters knows exactly what the comedian is going to do and bringing somebody to a political rally when the person that is running, that being the former president of the United States, is trying to win over people from different walks of life. You just don't do that. Now, I will say I heard the gasp too. I wasn't there. You know, you were there. But when I first watched it, I was pleasantly surprised to hear gasp in the room. I think that is a sign that this guy was not accepted. President Trump needs to come out and say that was not appropriate to that moment. He needs to apologize. I know that his campaign did, but it's a difference between the campaign doing something and having the candidate themselves. This man offended people. And yes, it was offensive because we have so much racial animus and tension in this country right now. It was ill-advised to have that kind of person there at that kind of rally.
I got to stop right there because the simple fact of the matter is, like, why are there so many people out there that's offended by this? Now, granted, wrong place, wrong time, but at the same time, you also have a number of people who are of Puerto Rican descent, who are Puerto Rican Americans out there, who a number of them say that, I mean, it's basically, I mean, it's like, they stated themselves they don't see anything wrong with the joke. But at the same time, if you think about it, Puerto Rico has been suffering with loads of trash and stuff on the island as well as around the island for years, if not decades, and no one's talking about it. So my thing is, if it's like, you know, comes down to one joke where, you know, a lot of people out there would get offended by it, rather than just doing something about the problem and stuff, that's on y'all. But at the same time, don't just take like that joke and say that Trump hired somebody to tell a joke and calling Puerto Ricans trash and everything or garbage. Joe Biden recently called Trump supporters garbage, you know, yet no one's batting an eye at that. So miss me with that kind of mess. And as far as Nina is concerned, as well as Piers Morgan and Poole and stuff, I mean, I could care less what they think, because simple fact that Piers Morgan himself seems to me that he said it was like off color, offhand and everything joke. And but at the same time, it seems like this is the same Piers Morgan who faltered to the threat of the legal team of Jay-Z and Beyonce and having to force them to apologize because, well, he's a part of the mainstream establishment media. you know, and simple, and it's no surprise that with Piers Morgan, where he will want to go ahead and just do stuff like this. Like if he's, it's one thing is for Piers Morgan to have these kind of views and stuff for a civil purpose, like to remain civil and everything. But at the same time, it seems to me that, you know, he wants to stay in the mainstream media for a long time. But at the same time, he does have some good views. But in this particular thing, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I may have to disagree with him on this, right? So we're going to continue with this whole Piers Morgan discussion.
And I write about this in Newsweek. It'll be coming out today. I think it is wrong for Democrats or people who lean to the left to be comparing that rally to Nazis, to be calling President Trump adjacent to, or Hitler. They didn't even say adjacent to.
I'll be honest, that shocked me. And you saying that Piers Morgan right there, I mean, he has a certain look on his face for now, but it's not, doesn't look like surprise or amusement. But Piers Morgan, on the other hand, it's interesting.
It's wrong. And it also takes away the very American nature of white supremacy. We ain't got to go to Nazi Germany. This country has a long litany from chattel slavery to taking indigenous lands of having its own form of white supremacy and bigotry that we need to deal with. But to compare President Donald J. Trump to Hitler and to say that the people who attended that rally are akin to Nazis is absolutely wrong and extreme. It's very extreme.
You know, I'm so glad you said that, because I feel that very strongly.
Well, I was wrong. Piers Morgan seems to be surprised by that. But let's continue with this whole Piers Morgan discussion.
You know, I'm not a natural conservative. I'm more of a liberal bent myself. But I just find that constant use of Hitler and Nazis, given how despicable they were, given they murdered 12 million people, they put 6 million Jews into a most heinous Holocaust. The idea that there's any comparison between that and Trump, I just think is,
and Piers,
it's appalling.
That's another
Tim,
point I want to make.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It minimizes.
Sorry,
I'm sorry for cutting off. It minimizes what really happened. You know, that's another. It's two things. One, it minimizes this country's history, and the other is it minimizes, to your point, what actually happened to millions and millions of people, and it's desperate.
Yeah,
it is a desperate narrative that further divides, and I'm really disappointed.
Well, that's interesting because of the fact that with all these things that's being discussed with the whole Tim Pool controversy, as well as the rally and everything. I mean, basically, Piers Morgan had Tim Pool to basically, you know, come to terms with what happened. And as you all heard, Tim Pool decided that he's not going to react to it or give it any attention. But at the same time, I'm honestly surprised with the fact that everybody up here on this Piers Morgan show, especially Piers Morgan himself, actually come into agreement about comparing the rally that took place in Madison Square Garden to the Hitler rally that took place there in 1939. So yes, that's definitely foolish, and that's all that the left has to, you know, go by at this point. But let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Also, be sure to include any additional thoughts you may have this particular topic. If you enjoyed what I said in this video, go ahead, smash the like button, share this video far wide across social media. And if you haven't done so already, you enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, click the bell notifications, so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.